Hi, this is Sean.
Thank you for, hi, Sean. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining the July 12th, 2018 VOLTA call. Today we are recording the session to post it later to YouTube, so please keep that in mind during discussions and presentations. And with that, I think, Sean, I have the first item was an agenda item you'd requested to be added. And I'm hoping we have enough folks on the bridge now that we can start the discussion. Do we have, let's see, do we have anyone from ONF?
I don't see Jono's here yet.
Not him yet either. Okay.
And then David Bainbridge just walked in.
Okay.
So let's move this. Give it a little bit more time for other people to join.
All right. So we'll defer this one for just a little bit, and we'll see if I probably need them for this next discussion also. I didn't check this morning, but I hadn't seen any feedback from the community after the last meeting on this first topic here. And so I wanted to bring this one up. And I do see Gamza's on the bridge as well. So thank you for joining. So I think for her to continue the work here, we need to get some response from the community. And she has a proposal out there for a path forward. So let me go over right now to 949, and we can take a look at this. And this is for the ability to create and delete downstream and upstream named bandwidth profiles to a database. And if you scroll down to the comment section, whoops, see if I can get there. I believe the ONOS task was merged, if I remember correctly. And so there was a suggestion from Gamza to merge 542 as well. And then there's related discussion over here. I've followed that link over here on VOLTA Discuss as well. So I'm hoping folks have had a chance to look at that offline between the last meeting and today. Gamza, would you like to make a few comments or to recap the discussion a little bit? See if we can get an answer for you.
Of course. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. As you know, I want to start 949 and to implement this task, I need feedback. And the issue is, my suggestion is to merge 542, because if you merge this task, then OLT application will depend on SEDIS, and SEDIS can be used as a component that communicates with external systems. And so SEDIS application can read bandwidth profile details from a remote server, and after that OLT application can get this detailed information from SEDIS when it needs. So what do you think about that?
So basically we need a database, right?
Yes.
And is status not a database?
Okay. So this communicates with a remote server. So we can use the same approach.
So what status does is it represents a local cache for data that is brought in from external systems.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right it has also cache.
Right now, as I think was pointed out in one of the other meetings, and it's absolutely correct, the model that status uses, the data model, is fairly free form. Mm-hmm. If we are going to expand status to include other data, new data, mm-hmm. I think we need to look at it and understand. Again, there might be multiple integration points that status needs to pull data from, how that will be configured, and how that will be reflected in the model that status exposes down to ONOS. And so that just needs to be looked at, and that would be looked at as, if we did this, it'd be looked at as part of those JIRAs. It would be a mistake to just keep adding free-form data into the status without visiting its API and visiting its model, as well as its configuration. That would be my only comment.
But the concept is not mentioned, is not suggesting using status for this purpose, right?
I believe this is being used. She is suggesting use status.
Okay.
Is that correct? You are suggesting use status, or at least?
Yes. Because if you merge 542, then OLT will use status. So I can use 2.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. I think it would be wise to revisit some of the API and the model as this was done, but
how much time we have to? I mean, I know we want to do it correctly.
It's open source. We have it forever.
I didn't hear that one.
But so one question also. Does that? Oh, what? I think I probably asked this question before. The status, the content of status, can that survive in the HA environment for the ONOS side?
For the ONOS, the status isn't a source of information. It pulls it from else and just caches it. So, as such, it survives HA naturally as long as the systems to which it talks survive HA. So I could have ONOS in a cluster running status on each node in the cluster.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a load balancer, or essentially, to call, act at any cluster, and it would, if it didn't have the data in the local cache, it'd go out and call the external system. And the status cache is configurable in terms of TTLs and that type of stuff for the data. So it's inherently HA, because it's not a source of data.
And it doesn't matter where the active ONOS is, the status content is staying in sync.
The status content doesn't stay in sync. It's a cache. You can put a 0 TTL on that cache, and then every request to status will go out and call the external system. Okay. You could put a 5-minute TTL on that cache, and then it's within 5 minutes of that external system. So you can customize that. Right now, it's a global customization. You could potentially customize that per different groups of data or different types of data if you wanted to, but that would take existing changes to status to do.
So I guess is there any strong objection to implement that as 542? Just temporarily.
They're combined. So we have 949 is the issue that Gamsa's working on, and her recommendation is to merge this older ticket, 542.
And it is invalid. It is invalid, but it's conflict.
Oh, yeah.
And this cannot merge.
Yeah, because of the conflict status.
So the last time it was updated was about 8 months ago. So this is a stagnant issue at this point. And so you need to decide if this is one that needs to get rebased and merged in. It was initially targeted. There was a fair bit of discussion, but I believe, let's see. Yeah, it was up for a new review, but would need to be rebased. So I think a decision needs to be made on 542 in conjunction with this discussion on 949. Do we need to have a separate targeted meeting for this, or do you think this is something we can address during these calls and over email?
Just do it.
Go ahead and do it.
I mean, do you have to retest it? You're on the reviewer.
Yeah, it'll have to be, if we want the other one re-reviewed, we'll have to go probably rebase and re-review it. Although status hasn't changed. If it's changed to status, it's probably not much to rebase. The issue would be going forward as we extend status to more data and new models. We just need to think about that. But that can be done under a given 549 or whatever it is.
Okay, so I think I heard we'll go ahead and rebase and merge 542. So Amit, I think you were the one working on that, if I remember correctly. Let me double check here. Yes. Amit? Yes. Amit?
Yeah, Julian, I had worked on that.
Is this something you could look at again for this sprint to rebase it?
Yeah, I could do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and so I did hear the agreement on 542. So David, I wasn't sure if your comment was also agreeing to use this approach for 949 as well, or if that still needs further discussion.
That I think it's my opinion is yeah, fine. We can use status as this integration point to external systems. Pull in data. Again, we just need to revisit how status is going to deal with multiple data models, as opposed to free-form data models, as well as multiple integration points, and that just needs to be clarified.
Okay, so Gamza, any other comments from others in the group? Gamza, do you have any other questions that need to be addressed today for this item?
No, thank you. No, thank you. It will be good.
Thanks, everyone. All right, so we have that one done. I think we'll go back now. We've got folks on the bridge. The first item that Sean had requested to be added was a discussion on the strategy for VOLTHA installation, since there are multiple methods that exist. And primarily, I think the discussion we wanted to have was related to using helm charts versus using the YAML files, and see if we could agree on a single installation method with, I think the assumption, Sean, is that would be using the helm charts. And then if that is the path we want to pursue, also probably just in general, since we're looking at the helm charts, should these be contained in a separate repo for the VOLTHA helm charts? Because right now they're in with Cord, and so there's a dependency there. So Sean, I don't know if I should hand this off to you, or if anyone else on the bridge wants to pick up that discussion topic.
I think right now, just like there are 4 different ways, right? So you have the Cord helm chart, and then you have the Kubernetes resources approach under the VOLTHA repository, and there's a Docker compose method, and I think there's a 4th one. I think for the community, and especially for someone new, it is, and there's no documentation regarding. I think the only documentation is quite available is actually the Docker compose. May have something. Yeah, I think because Docker compose is used for the VOLTHA playground. So there are certain documentation on that. So I think for the going forward with the community, we need to simplify this, and I think GoP was suggesting to have I guess, you know, the home chart under the Cord always feel like it sort of tie the impression is tie the VOLTHA installation tightly with the Cord. So I think it's probably a good idea to separate that. So have a separate repo under the VOLTHA to have a VOLTHA and ONO specific home chart. I think that's the way. Seems to be pretty have common consensus. I know I personally have not played with the helm chart. So Don Newton, I know you guys have done a great deal about the installation. Do you have any suggestion regarding this unified approach? Have a one-stop place so people can find how to the information and the files needed for the VOLTHA install.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a laudable goal, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, the only tweaks we do are we use our local Docker registry so that, you know, we can deploy, you know, bug fixes without having to go through Garrett, you know, locally for testing.
So one of the issues is where do you store the Helm chart? Where the repo? There's discussion, to the point where
where does AT&T or where does?
So where do they live in the source code tree? Do they have their own Git repo that are just for the VOLTHA Helm charts, or the VOLTHA Helm charts?
No, it's more than that. I mean, if you go to opencore.org, OpenCore, GitHub opencore.org, oh, good God, OpenCore, Helm charts. There's Helm charts there. That's the ones we cloned and we're using.
I understand that. The question is, do we remove VOLTHA Helm charts from that repository and either put them in the VOLTHA repository or create a new repository, VOLTHA-Helm, if you will, and have the Helm charts live there? That's one open question. I think we do need a separate Helm repo, much like we have charts.opencore.org, where I can just reference that in the Helm command and install things without having to download source. I think we need VOLTHA charts opencore or something.org so that I can reference that as a separate repo, Helm, to install the charts. And then the third issue is really right now the test suite around VOLTHA is heavily dependent, I think, at least on the compose file, if not on the other files. And we have to, before we remove compose files, we have to resolve that issue.
Okay, so let's I guess to me, as long as there's good documentation about where the Helm charts are and what they should be used for, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. If somebody does, then I would defer to them. Yeah, so unit test, etc., are done by our Docker Compose and Helm charts are not on par. Is that what you're saying? And something further to consider is Go, when you compile and install, Go won't include the unit test into the binary, right? It has to be done like a Go test. So that may be, I mean, that may drive some of the thinking around that as well as we move the core to Go.
Yeah, it's not so much the unit test, it's called iTest in VOLTHA, where they're using Python nose test to essentially call Docker Compose, exec out Docker Compose to bring up VOLTHA and do some very basic integration tests. That's where it's being used, and that's where it needs to be pulled out of.
Okay, I agree.
So who is doing that testing these days?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There was a company that was revisiting some of the tests, and this came up, I think, on the discussion list or in one of the Jira's or Garrett, because there was some question about why they were making some changes to the test suite, but that test suite still used Compose. So there was some discussion by Luca or Teo, I can't remember, that basically, why are we doing this? Why don't we just redo the test completely? And there was a discussion about expediency or doing something short term to get things up and running versus long term, which is an ever-going discussion.
So potentially we can contact Northern Forge, whether they can come up with something.
Yeah, I think it's wise to test the code the same way we expect it to run, which means if we expect it to run under Kubernetes and are testing it with Docker Compose, that's problematic.
Yeah, this is Daniel from Node4j, and we agree to run the test on Kubernetes. There's no problem. We just wait until the environment become more stable, and we are focused on the integration test involving ONOS component, VOLTHA component, and the simulator, the ONU and OLT simulator. So it's not about unit test, but we can work with you to integrate the unit test on the Jenkins as well.
in terms of decisions, I think we have to decide, are we going to make the authoritative source for the Helm chart the VOLTHA repository, or create a new Git repository just for the VOLTHA Helm charts? That's one decision. Another decision is, are we going to set up a Helm repo somewhere, and Luca did it for the chord charts, that feed the VOLTHA chart? And then the third decision, who and when are we going to extract, compose, and even Docker swarm files from any of the tests and documentation?
Are we talking also to use Helm charts for both production and development environment?
Do you see them as different?
No, I don't. It's just like if we want to have them unified, that would be better.
Yeah, I guess
but because at this time, all the documentation, like you said, everything is about Docker Compose. So we need to set up the documentation for Helm charts before developers can actually use it.
Agreed. I guess I'm trying to understand your question. Do you expect like a Helm prod and a Helm dev for VOLTHA, or just one Helm chart and we just need to update the documentation so that both developers as well as deployers know how to use the Helm chart?
I think I expect the deployers and the developers to know how to use Helm charts. So ideally, if we can have only one set of them, that will be better. But in the development environment, it will just be like one node with everything on it.
Yeah, the thing is, so the values are likely to be different depending on what, whether you're using 3 V cores or just a single, depending, whatever you're working on from a development perspective. But for AT&T, I know that the values will be different because we'll be using an internal Docker registry. So, I mean, and that one file is typically the one that's not the same.
I agree, and you can override values too.
Yeah.
So I agree.
I also want to revisit the idea. I definitely think that there's value for having ONOS and VOLTHA separate. But I also see in the case of when SIBA comes along, to simplify operations, I think there should also be the combined Helm chart or sets of combined Helm charts that I don't have to go load 45 things into a pod before I get the thing up. We need to be able to consolidate and bring those things together. So while I absolutely agree that they should have separate instances where you don't have to have SIBA, or you don't have to have ONOS, or you don't have to have whatever, I think when you do, we shouldn't have to install multiple different things and just keep installing and installing and installing and installing in order to get a pod up. I mean, if there's a certain pod configuration that we're going to do, you should get one Helm chart, I would hope.
Well, no, I disagree with the last part, but let me address the first part first. ONOS is a separate Helm chart, much the way we're doing VOLTHA, and then VOLTHA could depend on that. That's kind of interesting. I would push that back at the ONOS project and say, much like we depend on things like Kafka charts rather than repeat and copy those, we could depend, VOLTHA could depend on an ONOS chart, and it's up to really the ONOS project to develop their standard chart. I mean, we could help, but that's something I think we should push back at the ONOS TST and say, hey, we recommend this.
But do we really need to, at this stage, separate the ONOS and the VOLTHA?
The only issue is we have to understand in the ONOS chart how we deploy into it VOLTHA applications. ONOS comes as a binary loaded with applications that are by default mostly deactivated. VOLTHA requires applications that aren't in the default distribution of ONOS. So in terms of using a default ONOS Helm chart, we would have to understand how that would work so that we could load our applications. That has to be addressed.
You mean if they are separate?
they are separate.
That's, I would suggest let's combine them right now, right? This VOLTA require ONOS today.
VOLTA does require ONOS today.
So let's don't complicate it.
And that's fine.
And I do think that there are different configurations, though. I mean, VOLTA requires ONOS, but you know, in some of the things we're talking about SIBA, there's a lot more of ONOS that's going to be in the SIBA pod than necessarily. I mean, there needs to be different levels of containment and different levels of applications that you're pulling in, and it needs to be able to be, you know, you need to be able to come to as an operator, these are the things that I want, and I don't need to spend 42 days or 42 minutes or, you know, all different sorts of, I've got to run, you know, have an installation script that's 42 pages long in order to configure all of the things that I want. I should be able to say, I want this configuration and I want to install it, and boom, off things go.
I agree with the simple configuration, not 42 minutes, not 42 days, obviously. But right now, the Cord Helm charts depend on many Helm charts that are external to Cord. Well, not about many, but some, including things like.
If it works with dependencies, I'm fine. Just as long as it's a simple installation.
It works with dependencies, so we can externalize the VOLTA Helm chart from Cord just the way Cord externalizes things like
that's fine. I'm not saying that we can't use the tools the way they're meant to be used. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it needs to be a simple installation and not like I have to install this part, then I have to install that part, then I have to install the other part, then I have to install the other part. Just, it needs to be simple.
I agree. I agree, and I think that can be accomplished. Well,
so I'm not sure if we're going to have resolution on this call today on where to have those Helm charts, if we need a separate repo or we want to under.
I think Gopi has a suggestion, right? So let's go with the Gopi suggestion if no one has any objection about it.
So has that been distributed to the community? I don't remember seeing it on VOLTA Discuss.
No. So
okay, so I would suggest that be sent to VOLTA Discuss, and then comments can happen there.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Okay.
A question I have.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question in terms of installation. Like so far, we during the installation we went and installed like the Ubuntu, the VMs, and the Kubernetes, and all those things. Should this be a task of VOLTA, or should this be like VOLTA should only produce Helm charts, and then whoever's going to deploy it in the environment, they need to set up the environment? Should we still go with the process of developing like all kind of scripts to do all the installation of Kubernetes and everything?
No, my opinion, no. VOLTA is software that's deployed on top of Kubernetes. It is up to the operators of the data center, if you will, to get Kubernetes and Helm installed. However, it's perfectly reasonable to point them at things like KubeSpray or other things, and have examples of how you can set this up, like a quick start guide, right? Say, go look at KubeSpray's quick start. Make sure you modify this so Helm is done automatically installed, right? That type of thing, but it's not part of the official install of VOLTA. That's my opinion.
Yep. So that's part of the documentation we need to do, right? So I agree with what David was saying.
Yeah, me too. I agree with that. So does that mean that we no longer need to have the installation scripts for VOLTA?
You mean the offline installation script?
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit later.
So the answer is, I don't think we need an installation script. We need documentation that says, once you have Kubernetes and Helm up, and by the way, go look at KubeSpray or whatever, here's some alternatives. Here's the Helm chart commands that you have to execute to get VOLTHA up and running. And here are some interesting values that you may want to override.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Other questions? All right, thanks everyone. And Sean, either you or I can send an email off to Gopi afterwards. I'm not sure. I don't think I saw him on the call. So we'll follow up on that. Okay, so we did talk about this first item on the Sprint 4 status update. So we'll move on to the next ones. I just want to do a quick recap on 1047, if I have, because I believe there was additional testing taking place after Tuesday's meeting. I wanted to check in with the team and see where we are in that. So Don, I think your team was looking at things, and I'm not sure if Jono is on. So maybe it'll be just an update from Don.
Too early for most of California.
Yeah. So Jono was looking at it. We ended up having to entertain Cloudify all day yesterday, so we didn't actually get around to setting up the environment with the fix.
Okay.
But I mean, to me, I guess if Jono says if his stuff's still running in a reasonable fashion, then we could probably close it.
Okay. So we'll wait to hear back from Jono on that then. And I believe the next one was a follow-up for Jono also, so we may have to defer that one. So 10:30, I think this was the VOLTHA hangs that he had opened, and may have the same root cause, but I'll wait and check in with him later on those. So with that,
And Julie, by the way, so yesterday ONF they did cut a 1.4 release.
Oh yes, thank you. Okay, good.
So I think if they cut it, probably means they agree with the.
That's true, because they were holding off on cutting 1.4 until this was resolved. Okay, good point. Thanks. Thanks for that update. All right. I think next what I'd like to do is go over some of the issues we did not get a chance to look at on Tuesday in terms of new and recent JIRAs. Before I jump over there, though, I want to just check with the team if there are items that are in progress or to do at this point that people are working on where you need visibility from the community, comments, feedback, or questions, any of the sort. Are there any specific JIRAs that are in Sprint 4 that people would like to look at before we look at new issues? Okay, I am hearing nothing, so I will move on. And then I think I was starting with 1082. Let's see if I can find the right tab here. I probably cannot find the right tab. Bring up another filter. Okay, I'll go ahead and start at the top because we did have a couple new defects that were open. 1100, OpenOLT, EPOL does not work after OLT restart. And so this was just opened yesterday. Don't know if we have a lot more detail to add here. And let me see if Shad is on. Let's see. I don't see Shad on the call either. Okay, so we may not be able to. Oh, yes?
Oh, I just unmuted. I was just going to say, Nick was completely consumed all day yesterday, so there was no way he got a chance to look at this.
Understood. Okay. Do we think that this is one that, so we've got just over a week left in this sprint. Do we think this will be able to be addressed in Sprint 4, or is it too early to tell at this point? He does have, an estimate of 5 story points. That's a preliminary estimate.
So I haven't talked to him
Too
about
early?
I don't know if we've even looked at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, okay. So once you take a look, if it looks like it can be pulled into Sprint 4, please go ahead and do so. Thanks. All right, next is 1099, and this one was opened by Chip on OpenOMCI event bus topic for debug of OpenOMCI state machine change events. And Chip, I think I saw you on the bridge if you'd like to make a few comments.
Yeah, it's just trying to look forward on how we might be able to get information off the event bus to debug what's going on within OpenOMCI with respect to an ONU. So currently it does do information out to the log file, but it might be useful to be able to put this on the external VOLTHA.event Kafka bus just for state changes, so that it can be used to determine the current state of an ONU with respect to OMCI, or to help monitor, performance.
Any comments or questions from the group? Okay, and also wanted to see if this is one we think should go in 2.0, and we don't have any assignee yet for this. It's just opened as well.
Yeah, it's actually very simple to implement. I just wanted to bring it up as a separate topic so that people can have a comment for it.
And target it for 2.0, and then we can look at the sprint once we have an assignee for this. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I think next, Ken, are you still on the bridge?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Then I think we have a batch from you related to the transition to Go. And so if
Yes,
you want
that's
to
correct.
cover those in a group, then we can do that now.
Yeah, we can go over that in a group. Pretty much I created an epic before for anything migrating to Go. So those are a bunch of items I created just to follow up because there was some that was still in Twisted Python originally when they were created, like especially for the Kafka library. So there was some in the core that was still dealing with Twisted. So I have to change them to move to Go. So there's a bunch of them that you'll see.
Yeah, I was trying to find that. Here's no. I'm not sure which the epic number was. Was it this epic you wanted to look at?
Yeah, you can look at that one, yeah.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
So there's a one created for Go. Before it was all in Twisted, so now there's a new one for Go. Yeah, that 1094, that's the one in Go.
Yep. Okay. And then let's see. So we've got
can you go back? Can you go back to that epic real quick? Scroll down. Why is 688 in this epic?
This is closed.
Well, I know, but
no, it was open a while back, so it's no longer needed.
But it's not a Go thing, right?
No, it's not. That's why there's if you go
further
down.
I mean,
the epic was originally opened without reference to Go.
So I'm sorry. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind.
And so it's closed.
I thought this was a Go epic.
Yeah.
No. 688 has been replaced by 1025.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I thought this was a Go specific microservice epic, but it's not.
No, it's not.
Maybe we should have one.
No, there's one. It's just like this is part of common libraries that will be used by VOLTHA and adapters. That's why it has both Twisted and Go.
Okay.
The definition of the SAMPAV API, there are two of them, one for adapters, 1098 and 1096. Those are the work that I already started to define those interfaces. So I'm updating the document that I sent out based on some comments, limited comments, and I'm going to send it out again for another review. That's 1098 and 1096.
Okay. And so once that's available, then we'll ask for comments for the group again, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's correct.
do you need some time on one of these calls to go over that with a dedicated session, like a time slot to review that as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Well, I'll send it out once.
Okay.
Hopefully, I'll get most of it done. I'll be able to send something end of this week, and
Okay.
based on comments that I'll receive, we'll see whether we need
Okay.
a discussion session on that or not.
So if we need to
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
we
I
will.
think
on a Thursday, go ahead.
a larger discussion to figure out where other groups can fold into this effort.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Other questions on that? So we have the southbound APIs, northbound API for core and adapters. And let's see what we've got. Let me scroll down a little bit further. I think 94 we did. 1093. Is Sean on the call today? I don't see Sean Missette on the call. So this was another issue that was opened up, and this is on device management, or on the technology profile support. Establishment of authentication data path after subscriber logical port is reported to ONOS in port status overflow message. And so we have the details of that story in the description. And don't have them on the bridge today to review this, but if you do have comments or questions, please feel free to add those in on VOLTHA, sorry, in JIRA or on VOLTHA Discuss. Anything from the group? Okay, and this one he did place as targeting it for Sprint 5, so not expecting the work to continue or to start on that for this active sprint. And I think the next batch of tickets, we didn't have a chance to get them on Tuesday. We have Mike, I think you're on the bridge, so I can go ahead and let you talk about, I believe there's 5 or 6 of these from you, if you'd like to discuss those.
These are just pulling out, and I don't know if I put them in the right components or what. These are basically just pulling out the various pieces of status information that were from the SCAPS user stories that we sent out a while ago. So this is just about providing an upstream interface to NEM or SIBA in order to be able to provide these data parameters to somebody that's trying to troubleshoot the network. So I'm not sure on 1089. The one that I have, the one question that I have is on 1089. Whether we're doing this now or whether this can be deferred till later. I mean, there are some ONTs out there that will persist provisioning on their own in their own local storage. I don't know if we're directing those to do that or not. So we have in the past had ONTs that we manage in our network that we do allow to persist that data, and this provides status on whether that data has properly been persisted or not. This might be one that could be scheduled for a later time if we're not currently doing this, or the ONTs that we're using don't really support this. This could be marked sometime in the future. It's just something that we currently have as we use this in our operations today. The other ones I think are just pretty much straightforward. I think let's see, I want to look at 1088. Let me see 1088. I think there was one. Let me see. Yeah. So this one is an interesting one. The one that the original user story called out thresholding this to be able to, one, retrieve the signal the optical signal levels, and then 2, provide alarming based on thresholding. I moved the alarming based on thresholding up into CBNEM as part of a CBNEM user story. And this one here is just reporting the signal levels upstream in a status type of thing. So this is basically what was presented previously in user stories in terms of operational status. I think in general, it was presented before. If anyone has any questions or follow up or says we don't know how to get this data from the bow drivers or whichever, we can definitely talk about it and prioritize. I don't think there's anything earth-shattering in here.
Any questions for Mike? And I don't see Jim on the call today, but I know the Mariner team was going to be looking at kind of leading alarms and PM effort on VOLTHA. So we may want to touch base with him and see if his team can maybe give us the story point estimates for this. And then I think, Mike, you'd be targeting, sounds like for most of these at least, maybe not 1089. I think we're targeting VOLTHA 2.0.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah, this is our minimum set, correct? Okay, so
yeah.
I'll put that one in 2.0.
Does anybody put out some sort of, I don't know, a presentation, diagram, anything about how we expect this data to be published, collected, and exposed? I mean, I agree we need it exposed.
These particular commands are on-demand requests. So upstream would request it and you would retrieve a value. The PM and the alarms would be a little bit different, but this would just be an on-demand status request. Give me the real-time value of this based on an upstream request.
Understood.
So it would be.
Has anybody, maybe I've missed it, maybe I just have forgotten it. Has anybody kind of diagrammed out, if you will, how the implementation, the design behind the implementation of this?
On these particular status ones, not necessarily the PM or the alarms, on these particular status ones, I believe that VOLTHA needs to provide an API that NEM would be able to execute, that NEM would have an API from an upstream point of view that says, give me the operational status of the ONT alarm interface, give me the operational status of the ONT uniport, give me the current optical status, data, give me the current status of the PON. We would need APIs that would be able to be sent down, and then these parameters would be returned. So for me, it's a dynamic. It's a poll. Give me this data. Give me that data.
So I guess my question is, I could envision an implementation where there's a new container, if you will, added to the VOLTHA set of containers, which listens to the Kafka bus, which with events published by other VOLTHA, the ONT adapters, and essentially consolidates the information, and then those queries come down and hit that container. That's one implementation. There's other implementations, obviously, too. What I'm trying to understand is I'm not trying to question whether NEM needs to be able to query this interactively like that, like a poll. What I'm questioning is the implementation of that interface and where the data comes from, the data paths, if you will, the data storage. Has that been detailed out yet, or is that still under development?
I haven't set any design behind it. I assumed it was more of a real-time retrieve. What does the hardware tell me this is the state of this information, as opposed to I'm collecting a status somewhere and collecting objects. And I mean, I assume these operational status ones were more like, give me the real-time status of this. But I mean, I'm not going to set an implementation that I'm not going to specify what has to be the implementation. This is the intention of these. Give me the real-time status of these particular parameters. That's the intention of the request.
I was just questioning, and I didn't expect necessarily design to come from you because you're like putting the requirements in. I was just wondering if I thought it was mentioned that someone's actually looking at the implementation of this. I was really trying to understand if they've done any work in terms of implementation yet, or if it's still kind of been the.
I mean, it's related to PM and alarms. I agree, but for PM is a bend on a number of these things, like optical signal levels. We like in how we see what is a PM of an optical signal level versus the real-time status of an optical signal. When you pull those types of things, it's just a snapshot at a very particular point in time. It's not really any accumulated data. It's just like, okay, I pulled the optical signal levels at the 15-minute interval, and then I pulled it again at the 30-minute interval, and then I pulled it again at the 45-minute interval. And so PM is just kind of a over history over time. I've pulled values randomly versus a status is I want to know exactly what it is right this minute. I mean, while it's all related and the design can best come up with the right way to implement this stuff, it's not exactly the same as the alarms or the PM.
Yeah, I think there's a philosophical discussion there, because the minute you pull the data, it's invalid. It's changing underneath it, right? It's just the delta.
Well, no, specifically the optical data, the optics information. It's just a snapshot. It's just a running snapshot in the PM side. In the status side, it's more just like, tell me what it is right now, and if I want to, tell me again, and tell me again, and tell me again. I mean. The operator is getting the real information versus 15-minute window might have been pulled 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, or whatever. The problem with necessarily having a poll that goes directly to the hardware each time is, of course, if I have 20 clients and they all do the same request, I'm now killing the hardware and the management part. Where if I can somehow put something in front of it, you can kind of keep the hardware a little safer. I'm not putting any requirements on how real time it has to be. I'm not trying to put a requirement on that. Whoever's doing the implementation, I guess it's unassigned. I was under the impression someone was actually looking at the implementation. I just think there needs to be discussion around that when that happens.
But I think the difference, right? The optical layer, I think it's instantaneous at the moment of when you pull it, right?
Right.
And then you have like a error rate, the bit error rate or something like that. Then that should be an interval, right? So
I get that. The question is, the minute I pull data, that data can change the millisecond after my query returns.
You're being picky, but no.
No, and that's fine. So what we're dealing with is what is my probability, if you will, that my data is as I queried it.
So the operation sometimes they say, okay, I'll pull data now, and I'll pull data later, right? So if they want to compare two instantaneous,
and that's fine.
So that's what we do, right? And then I think you need to be able to provide the tools for all. You need to provide all stack, right, every 15 minutes or every 24 hours, right? But at the same time, you need to give the operation the chance that I want to pull every, I have a
on demand. And again, I'm not arguing against the poll. I'm trying to understand the implementation. If anybody's thought about it, it sounds like it hasn't been detailed yet. So I'm not arguing against the need for poll. When we get down to the implementation, I think there needs to be a discussion so that we are protecting the hardware from 20 hits on a client or 20 different clients hitting at the same time, and we do meet the time requirements for a poll, which means semi-instantaneous as opposed to 15-minute interval.
I guess that's a hardware requirement, right? So by the instantaneous poll, I think usually I don't know. I don't see there will be 20 people, 20 sessions at the same time. Okay. So.
Yeah, one of the things on this is in the in OMCI, you will be getting attribute value changes for some of these operational state parameters. So those are generated autonomously by the ONU, and OpenOMCI will be collecting those and publishing them. And also there are specific alarms that can be raised that will report some of this information. So
anytime you deal with published events and that maintain state, if the entity that's collecting those events trying to collate that state goes down and comes up, it has to be able to kind of reset itself. And that's another need for an instantaneous poll. It's like, okay, I'm listening to events to keep up to date, but I've crashed. And when I come back up, I need the zero state and then continued events. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
So
have
again, not arguing against poll, an instantaneous poll, just trying to understand if there's been implementation discussion around this, or if it's documented, and it sounds like it isn't yet.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do, and Sean, you can tell me if you think I'm directing to this to the right person or not. I think I'd like to reach out to Jim, since he's not on the call today, and ask him if they are looking at how this be done for real-time requests and stats as well, if that's covered under what they're looking at with the alarms and PM. And then if so, then see if we can pull together a discussion topic for one of the future calls, so we can have that architecture discussion with them. Sean, do you think that's the right person to go to?
I think that'll be a good approach. Yeah,
Okay.
Jim. Again.
Yeah, he's usually on, but he's not here today, so I'll follow up with him offline and bring the question to him related to the current data info and the on-demand values. See if they're considering that when they're looking at the support for the work they're doing there. Okay, and then so David, thanks for bringing the topic up. I think we'll see if we can get something scheduled for one of the Thursday meetings to go over that with an architecture discussion. So that'll be a follow-up item. Okay, and then let me go. Losing my voice here, sorry. Let me go on mute for a sec. Okay, so let me go back over here. I think we had a couple, which was I going to? So Mike, I did want to ask you on 1089, you said this could be deferred. Is it one you want in 2.0 if possible, or should we just go ahead and put it in future for right now?
Is this something that if it's something that we're managing today and this is just status, then yes. If it's not something we're doing today, or we're not something we're considering doing today, or the ONTs that we're using today don't support it, then no. I mean, if it's just status of something we do today, then yeah, let's put it in. If it's not something we do today, or it's not something the ONTs we use today do, then no. Then it can be future. I don't know. I don't know if this is covered on the ONTs that we use today.
And that'd be a question for the larger group as well, since there are multiple folks involved. Any feedback from the group?
I would assume that the Open OMCI folks would know whether we're even building any of the, because you would have to, over OMCI, you would have to direct the ONT to persist its data or whatever, or so you need an Open OMCI mechanism to tell that ONT to persist itself. So I mean, is this something that we're working on, testing on with the ONTs we're using today, or I mean, I don't know. If it's not something we're doing today, let's make it future. I don't want to say that we need it today.
This is our preliminary assessment here, so we can always move this in if we need to. So I'll go ahead and put it for future for now, and then if we have feedback that we should include it, then we'll pull it back in. Or would you rather me put it in 2.0 and move it out if it's not needed? Would that be better?
I'm fine with it being out until we think we need it.
Okay, then I will leave that one there. I think operational standardized OT, we'll move this one in as well. And I think
back to that 1089, Mike.
Yes.
Is it possible we can list is it just for the optical signal level, or you want it, or the scope is much bigger? Mike.
1089 this is not about optical, oh, wait a minute. Oh, 1089, okay, all right. I have a problem on 1089. I did not copy the right data into 1089. So okay. This is not about optical signal level. Let me go edit the description of 1089. This is confusing. I'm reading the title and not the details. So the description of 1089 is wrong. I will fix it.
And also one thing maybe will help the community is define what are
this would be like all this would be like all of the things that have been provisioned on the device. Store it locally. Don't just come back up with it in the state that it was previously. So all the OMCI objects, this is just persist locally all of your data and come up with it, as opposed to having to come up with nothing and download it all over OMCI. So this is all of this is persist locally all of your configuration information.
And then such as we can use like a retrieve or show to get those data. Okay.
Well, it's intended to, I guess, to allow the ONT to come up faster with its previous state, as opposed to having to wait and get everything but I mean, I don't know how the OMCI state machine's working. I don't know if this is even currently supported. This is something that we have today and something we use today operationally. So I just put it in here, although the description I put in here was just
I think when I was doing this, I was reading the description. So let me put this in. Chip, did you have a comment?
Yeah, there's an existing story on, I guess this is sort of related to Vol 723, which is offline OMCI provisioning. And that refers to be able to do a lot of the provisioning, which results in actually OMCI MEs being set up without the ONU being present. And that was something that was deferred to post 2.0. So I think that's sort of similar to.
I think this is the opposite side. This is more on the OLT side versus more on the ONT side. This is on the one that I'm talking about specifically is actually just retrieving the status of. So I tried to persist my data to a local flash on the ONT, and what is the status of that? Implying that you have the ability to persist the data locally on the ONT. It implies the ability to do something. If we're not using that, then we don't need status of it. So anyways, I will fix the description. I'm sorry. That description is wrong.
And then I think the next item we have here, I think we had some brief discussion on this last meeting, but we'll see. This is OpenOLT statistics treatment structure. I think this is the patch that went in related to 1047, if my memory serves me right here. So this one is already complete. I don't think we need to go over that one. And we're almost caught up. So 1084, this one, Sean, I think where we ended up after the discussion on Tuesday was that there was going to be a separate JIRA opened up related to removing outdated documentation.
And also I requested to have some of the adapter to be included.
Yes,
right?
So we have, those are captured in here, I think, in your comment on this issue. And then it was in the notes from last meeting. I think we assigned you the action item of opening up that JIRA. Okay. So I captured the comment here on the last meeting, but we figured it needed a separate JIRA to trigger the completion of that. Okay.
Yeah. My bad.
Then, oh no, just wanted to follow up on it today. And then I think, let me just check if Shad is joined. I don't see him on the bridge. Okay, so this one, I think no change since our last meeting either. So this is the OpenOLT, VOLTHA OpenOLT out of sync with the ONU. And this is related to the serial number. I think there's been some discussion on this in the background between Nick and Shad, if I remember correctly. But I don't think we have anything to add to this one today since Shad's not on. Don, is there anything you know of for this item?
Yeah, I think probably because
Don may have dropped.
activity activity going on, so I don't.
Sure. Okay. And then this is around where we left off also last time. So 1082 is removing XPON from core. And so I think that brings us through the issues we didn't get to cover on Tuesday. So there's still a number that were open previously. We haven't done any sort of deep discussion on, a number of stories on security, for example, and I think some of the PM and alarm ones also. So,
and I think some of the security stuff, the Danish from the Edge Core will try to review that and see what some of them they can pick up.
Good.
I did mention about the device user activity control, user access control, and also the user activity log. I think that's something the Edge Core device itself should be able to do that. So I'm going to have him to see whether he can add some of those stories to resolve some of them.
Thanks, Sean. And I think I'll go back to the agenda slide right here. And what I'd like to do next is we've got a little time left, just a quick look at the status of where we are on the sprint planning, see if we have any updates. And again, Sean Musset isn't on, so I'll have to follow up with him later on this one for the number.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
just on the phone though.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, that's why I didn't see your name.
I can't see the board or anything, but.
Okay, so I had a question for you. If we have a sense at this point of how many sprints are going to be needed to complete the technology profile work, or is that your investigation?
So I mean, the way things are progressing right now, it's probably going to be quite a lot. So
I'll leave it as TBD, and then if we get an update, then we can do that. Since you're on, don't mind, I'm going to go back to one of the JIRA issues, the new ones that you had opened up, because I didn't realize you were on the bridge since I didn't see your name. So sorry about that. And let me see if I can find the right tab. And if I can find, I think it was 1093, establishment of authentication data path after subscriber logical port reported to ONOS in the port status OpenFlow message. So I did point out this one, you did place it in Sprint 5, so we're not expecting work to start on it for a couple of weeks here. Is there anything you wanted to discuss with the group on this issue? Or for the group, since we do have Sean on, he can answer questions if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, so basically this is basically when the ONU logical port is first reported up to ONOS, and basically goes and looks up the subscriber information from the status record. The status record itself should have the technology profile, flow ID reference, and the bandwidth profiles. There's still work to do on the bandwidth profile side to, how is that going to get created and loaded onto into VOLTHA, and are we going to take the same approach with the technology profiles as with the bandwidth profile? So basically, a meter needs to get created, and it needs to get downloaded. I don't know whether that would go right to the KV store, just like we do with the technology profiles, and then when the adapter gets the reference in the flow add, it would then go and grab the bandwidth or the meter information from the KV store and basically instantiate that for the OLT side. So we've already some discussions around that. I have created a message sequence chart around that, and I'm actually ONF today as well. So I'll probably have some discussions with Shad and Jonah around that as well. But so if there's any questions, please speak up. I may not have answers, but
any questions for Sean? Okay, then let me go back to that slide on the planning one. So Chip, I think this is around the time we were going to consider sort of taking another look at the velocity of the work on OpenOMCI and see if we needed to update our estimate for the number of development sprints. So I'm not sure if that's something that this is the right time to do it, or if we should still put that off a little bit longer.
Well, we can probably do that, I guess, separately. I'm actually in the middle of a very long email to Jason and yourself and
Okay.
Matt and everybody to basically the current state of where we're at and where help is. So
okay,
you should get that in about 30 minutes.
Very good, thanks. And while we're talking about open, yeah.
Hey Chip, I just keep sending people to your site, but you know, I also see you spend a lot of time explaining things back to the potential help we have. Hopefully that doesn't take away too much of your time.
No, this has actually been pretty helpful because of Jason's message this morning. I'm sort of hijacking that thread and basically doing a complete brain dump, just so that perhaps like later towards next week we can sit down and make sure we can go through and rescope, make sure we've got the right estimates.
Okay, great.
And I've got you copied on that email.
Thanks.
And then I did add Lynn from Cambridge onto the OpenOMCI stack work, since it looks, and Lynn is on the call today as well. I believe he's getting engaged in that work and is in some discussions with Chip right now. So I've updated that a little bit. We still have a few items that don't have technical leads at this point, and so we'll need to follow up on that as we go along. Security is one of those. So Sean, it looks like you have someone who may be at ONF who may be looking at some of those issues. So we'll need to kind of take a look at these again later. David Bainbridge, I did have a question for you on the log management. I know we have some stories entered. I was not sure if we have an estimate for when that work will, how much effort we think is involved in terms of number of sprints.
No, we don't.
Okay, so we'll kind of just keep that on hold for right now.
Correctly, I don't. I don't know if anybody else does.
Are you being lagged?
Yes.
I have you down as the technical lead for it, so that's what I'll be looking to you for those updates if we have them.
All right.
Okay. And then, Ken, I do have an update here. We'd updated this on one of the previous calls, I think. So with the decision to move the core to Golang, we added those 3 sprints to the restructure for VOLTHA core. So that will now include the conversion to Golang as well. So does that still, I know this has been a recent change, is that still a good estimate at this point? Is 3 additional sprints for that work?
At this point, yes.
Okay, so if something changes, please let me know so we can kind of adjust our plans accordingly. Yep. Okay, so at this point, I think pending what we hear back down the road, once we have a better sense of the number of sprints required for technology profiles, and also a reassessment of the sprints required for OpenOMCI stack, then I think our current view right now is with the 8 sprints for total for the core, and that did start with sprint 1, then this, and then adding in the integration testing with the Kubernetes cluster, and then the hardening sprint, that puts us at an estimate of 10 sprints total for this. And Sean, I think you have an updated slide I haven't pulled in here yet with a new timeline showing 10 sprints, if I remember correctly.
I just updated on the wiki.
Okay, so it's on the wiki. So that, maybe I should go over to the wiki then. And, whoops, do I have it open? Okay. Let me pull that up here so we can take a look at it. Oh, it's
on the main page. The main page.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Okay. So this puts our timeline at roughly just before Thanksgiving, perhaps in the U.S. So late November is an estimate at this point for the 8 development sprints plus the integration testing and then the hardening sprint. So that's a rough timeline. So I think we're still talking about targeting end of year for 2.0, and we have a number of pieces that are still to be determined for that to make sure that happens. But I think the ones we have the best handle on right now for timelines really are the core and then the OpenOMCI work, OLT adapter, tech profiles. Ken, while I have you here, I also wanted to double check on the containerization of the adapters. So I know you're working on the Ponsum adapter portion. Initially, we had that, we thought that would complete, let's see, we're expecting it to start in sprint 1 and then be 2 or 3 sprints. So I think our schedule is a bit off on this slide that I have here, because we thought we'd have other adapters starting between sprints 3 and 4, which obviously we're not at that point yet.
Yeah, that's correct. It's that work pretty much before there was only one library, one twisted Python library, because the core and the adapters were going to use the same. But now I need to develop a Go library.
Okay.
And then use this. So that that estimate there's changes. I need to revise that.
Okay. Okay. So when you have an estimate for that, just send me an email or something, and then I'll update it on my working chart here, and then kind of reset the expectation for the other adapters as well. Okay. Thank you for that. I think those were the main items I'd wanted to touch on this for updates today. Questions from the group before I go back to the VOLTHA board? Okay. And Sean, thank you for providing that update with the roadmap on the wiki. That way it's available for everyone to view. Okay, so looking at active sprints. So also just FYI, I hadn't quite realized this had happened while I was gone, but on the last couple of meetings, I was looking just at sprint 4, and we do have a couple of VOLTHA issues that are in QP sprint 6 as well. So we've not been getting updates on those for the last couple of meetings because I did not realize I needed to be looking at that as well. So 1066 and 1067, I believe, are those 2 items. And so going forward, I will try to remember to have this filter set for all sprints so that we get those status updates as well. And since we didn't talk about those 2 on the previous call, I don't know if there's any discussion that needs to be done today. So this is related to, for one, is related to the Helm charts and some references on the version.
Yeah, I thought it is on mute. Oh, no, it's not.
No, it's not on mute. I thought you were going to give me an update.
No. I actually was speaking.
Okay. I don't know if you're speaking to me. Green means everybody can hear you.
Talk.
Okay. Any questions from the group or any updates on this item for discussion today? I just wanted them to pop those back up for visibility since I had missed them on the previous call. Okay, and then the other one is related to.
Wait. So Sean, you thought 1057 was complete?
I thought someone was talking. There was some discussion regarding 1066.
1066.
So 1066, FTD operator required is 077. Helm charts have etcd operator 073. I don't see anything in here other than the comments that Stefan had provided related to the versions in use.
Okay. And Stefan actually using the 092.
Right, 092.
Kubernetes.
Kubernetes 092. XPD 3218.
Yeah. So I deployed with Helm last week, and I believe the latest version of etcd operator deploys 092, and the etcd component, I think it was 3213.
the 3218, is that a date?
Well,
Look like,
so the 3218 is the etcd component that I use during my testing, but the Helm charts deploy 3213, if I remember right. I can double check.
Okay, so Sean, you may be right that these changes have gone in, at least the 092 for the etcd operator, but a different one here.
Stefan, when you say you install the new one, do you install it from the repo, or you're actually talking about the update, the current version of the etcd software itself?
Sorry, you mean
the current version? What can you please define current version? What you installed? Is that from the
what
internet?
I installed? So during my testing, I was using 3218. The latest version is like in the 3.2 release branch. It's 3.221. 3.224 is the latest one. If you look at the etcd website, the etcd repo.
So Julie, I think it's from the XCD, the open source website.
Yes, exactly. But what I was saying is the Helm doesn't use the latest.
Right.
It probably uses the stable version.
So we don't know what. So, but that's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
077 versus 32 something.
No, 077 to 092.
077.
etcd operator.
In theory, in production, you probably want to. Well, if you can get away with it, you want to use the latest stable.
Yeah, actually, they're using 3.210 in the Helm chart.
10. Okay.
3.210 in some chart.
Okay. So, and then 0. Okay, thanks for that, Stefan. So I just put a tag in here for Gopi to give an update on this. So we'll hopefully have something in there to review on our next meeting. Okay, and then the other item here that did not get reviewed last time was full 1067. And so this is related to the Celestica and adding it to ONOS 1.31. I think there was some discussion about this, and I believe, and Jono is not on, correct? Let's see. Okay, and so I believe his recommendation to resolve this was to remove the Celestica manufacturer string from the Celestica adapter. So this is, I think, still an open issue, but I did want to bring it up for visibility since I missed it on the last call.
So maybe the Daniel. Okay, so we reach out to Daniel, see whether he has reviewed the recommendation by John. Okay.
All right. And I think that's it for what I wanted to cover. We've got about 5 minutes left. Any other topics people want to discuss in the 5 minutes remaining?
Just a quick question. Has there been a decision made on the repo structure? Are we going to go with repos for core and different adapters, or we're going to use the same structure that we have today?
My understanding is we don't have. Well, actually, I should let someone else talk. Were you talking about the initial discussion we had at the beginning?
I think the idea is, are we going to put the Go core in a separate repo or a branch?
Oh, the Go core. Sorry. Different topic. Yes.
But it's still under the GitHub Garrett of the court, right?
Trying to remember the decision. I have short-term memory problems.
We talked briefly with Shad yesterday because Shad was actually thinking the VOLTHA should have our own GitHub.
Its own
GitHub.
GitHub is different than Garrett. Git repository.
Garrett. So we should have our own Garrett.
So there should be a Garrett at volta.org.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't know who owns volta.org or how that's going to be set up.
Right. So I think that's a long
Stratum is just using GitHub now and has abandoned Garrett. Ken, I think there was a decision. I thought it was we were going to put the core in a separate repo. Is that everybody else's?
The core? The Go core. Yeah.
Go core is going to be in a separate repo. Is that your question?
Yeah, and has it been created? And is anybody?
I think what John was saying, when you guys ready, then they will create.
When we're ready to check-in, are you ready to do a check-in?
Well, we have some code here and there that we would like to start to push them.
Okay. So let's get. I'll talk to the Jono and have that created today, if we can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think the decision was when you guys ready to check in, then we'll create.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, and potentially more than one. So, Julie, I think we addressed that issue.
Yeah, that was during the session you hosted, right? That discussion?
Yes.
While I was on.
We posted it on the record. Julie just posted a recording on both that discussed. One thing is, there will be there's a request regarding to the software architecture review deep dive from Deutsche Telekom. So I will pull that meeting together. It will be open to everybody, but probably outside the call schedule of the TSD calls. Ken, I will discuss more detail with you what's the content and what's the scope we want to go over. I did share the presentation you have during the April lockdown, but I think they want to talk a little bit more. Just want to know the stability of the structure and then the plan of moving forward. So those are some of the scope will be included. And they also asked about documentation. The only thing I can find just the PowerPoint presentation, right? So I'm going to work on that. So it will most likely will happen next week for the deep dive. But anybody in the community want to understand the VOLTHA software architecture and design, then we will be welcome to join. But Ken, I will talk to you a little bit more further offline.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and we are at the end of our time slot today. Any last questions or comments before we drop the bridge?
I didn't know today is the 90-minute call.
Because it's Thursday. All right. I think we're done for today, so I'll go ahead and drop the bridge. Thanks, everyone. I will